Okay, hello, and welcome to Space Coconut MTG. I'm Space Coconut, and today on Cheapskate Commander, we'll be talking about Marneus Calgar, one of the side commanders from the Warhammer 40k pre-con deck Forces of the Imperium. The rules for these decks are simple. The majority of the cards in the list are $1, except for exceptional cards that are too good to leave out of the decks that are still under $5 or so. We leave out the lands except for utility lands that will help with the theme of the deck because you should just use what you have available in your collection. If you like videos like these, please consider leaving a token of appreciation and hit that like button. You can also sub and hit the notification bell if you want to see more budget deck techs like this in the future. Because of the algorithm. Marneus Calgar is a 3/5 legendary Astartes warrior with double strike that costs 2 white, blue, black. It says whenever one or more tokens enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. It also says pay 6 to create 2 2/2 white Astartes warrior creature tokens with vigilance. So Marneus is clearly a token commander that acts as a draw engine. The double strike will simply make him a defender because you're never actually going to attack with him, unless you're winning or desperate. And 6 mana is quite a bit for the tokens you get with his second ability, so if you're paying 6, it's only because you're desperate or you have infinite mana. For those reasons, we'll focus on a go-wide token strategy, but here's why. Marneus' ability only triggers when one or more tokens hit the field, so ideally, you want tokens to drop one after another instead of a big pile of tokens at once. It's this caveat that also stops us from rolling with a full-on aristocrat strategy and making big tokens instead. The meat of our deck are our token generators, but thankfully Marneus triggers on any token, and since Marneus costs 6, let's start with some treasure tokens to get some ramp on. Horde Robber will make a treasure when it deals combat damage to a player. Zhentarim Bandit will make one when it attacks if you pay 1 life. Gilded Pinions will make a treasure when it enters the battlefield and give your biggest creature flying. Goldvein Pick and Prying Blade will both make treasure tokens when the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player. Noble's Purse will enter the battlefield with 3 counters on it. Then you can tap it and remove a counter to make a treasure token. Depths of Desire will bounce the most threatening creature to your opponent's hand and create a treasure token. Hornswoggle will counter a creature spell and make a treasure token. Grim Bounty will destroy a creature or planeswalker and make a treasure token. A Deadly Dispute asks you to sacrifice an artifact or creature, so hopefully you have a token you can toss, but you'll be able to draw 2 cards and make a treasure token. But if Marneus is out, you get 3 cards and a treasure for 2 mana, which is pretty great. Then we have Fake Your Own Death. This instant will give a creature +2/+0 and return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control, and you create a treasure token. So this can kind of act as protection when your opponents inevitably destroy Marneus. Captain's Clause will give the equipped creature +1/+0, and whenever it attacks, you create a 1/1 core ally creature token tapped and attacking. The Inquisitorial Rosette will do the same, except it doesn't buff the creature, and the token you create is a 2/2 Astartes warrior with vigilance that's attacking. Then gives your attacking creatures menace until end of turn. Court of Grace is $2.50 when I'm writing this, but it's really ideal for the deck. It's an enchantment for 2 and 2 white that gives you Monarch when it enters the battlefield. At the beginning of your upkeep, you create a 1/1 white spirit with flying, but if you're the Monarch, you get a 4/4 angel with flying instead. Emeria Angel is a 3/3 with flying and landfall that says when a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may create a 1/1 white bird with flying. Felidar Retreat is almost $2, but it's really good also. It's an enchantment with landfall. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, you choose 1. Create a 2/2 white cat beast, or put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, and they gain vigilance until the end of turn. Ghoulish Procession is an enchantment that creates a 2/2 zombie with decayed when 1 or more non-token creatures you control die. It only triggers once a turn though, and since the zombie is sacrificed after combat, it might just be better to use these particular tokens as fodder for your other things for the most part. Henwire Militia Captain won't do anything right away as a 2/2, but at your upkeep, if you control 4 or more creatures, it transforms. Its power and toughness are then equal to the number of creatures you control, and at the beginning of your end step, you create a 1/1 white and black human cleric. Hidden Stockpile will create a 1/1 servo if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn. You can also pay 1 and sack a creature to scry and activate that trigger. Min Wily Illusionist is a 1/3 legendary gnome wizard that says whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 1/1 blue illusion token with this creature gets +1/+0 for each other illusion you control. When an illusion you control dies, you may put a permanent with mana value less than or equal to that creature's power from your hand onto the battlefield. Nightmare Shepherd is a 4/4 flying demon that says whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a 1/1 and a nightmare in addition to its other types. Doomed Artisan is a 1/1 that says sculptures you control can't attack or block. At the beginning of your end step, create a colorless sculpture creature token with this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of sculptures you control. Exotic Pets is an instant that will make 2 1/1 unblockable fish. Then for each kind of counter among creatures you control, put another one on those creatures. Then we have Thalise, Reverent Medium, a 3/4 human cleric that says at the beginning of each end step, create X 1/1 white spirit tokens with flying, where X is the number of tokens you created this turn. That's really good for this deck, but as good as Thalise is, she's not the best card in the deck. The best card in the deck would probably get some kind of totally original golden coconut award if I could give one out, or had one made or anything like that. But the best card in this deck is Nadir Kraken, a 2/3 Kraken that costs 1 and 2 blue. It says whenever you draw a card, you may pay 1. If you do, put a 1/1 counter on Nadir Kraken and create a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token. So, if you don't have anything better to do with your mana, you can draw as many cards, put as many counters on Nadir Kraken, and create as many tentacle creature tokens as you have mana if Marneus is on the field. It's not completely broken, but there really isn't a card that uses our commander as well as Nadir Kraken does, so it would deserve an award if I had one. We also have Cackling Counterpart and Faded Infatuation. Both are instants that will create a token copy of a creature we control. Cackling Counterpart has flashback for 5 and 2 blue, while Faded Infatuation costs 3 blue and lets you scry 2 if it's your turn. Quasi-Duplicate will do the same at instant speed. It also has Jumpstart, which lets you cast it from your graveyard by discarding a card and paying its mana cost, then you exile it. Okay, so now that we have plenty of creatures entering the battlefield slowly and drawing cards from our commander, we need to add in cards that will benefit from that. Ominous Seas is an enchantment for 1 and a blue that says whenever you draw a card, put a foreshadow counter on it. Remove 8 counters and create an 8/8 Kraken token. Hoofprints of the Stag is an enchantment that says whenever you draw a card, you may put a hoofprint counter on the enchantment. Then you can pay 2 and white to remove 4 counters and create a 4/4 white elemental with flying during your turn. Oneirophage is a 1/2 with flying for 3 and a blue that gets a 1/1 counter whenever you draw a card. Crusader of Odric costs 2 and a white and has power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. Chasm Skulker is a 1/1 for 2 and a blue that says whenever you draw a card, put a 1/1 counter on it. Then when it dies, create X 1/1 squid creature tokens with Island Walk, where X is the number of counters on Chasm Skulker. Creatures with Island Walk can't be blocked if your opponent controls an island. Boss's Chauffeur costs 4 and a white and enters the battlefield with a number of 1/1 counters on it equal to 1 plus the number of other creatures you control. It also has whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on Boss's Chauffeur. Then it finally has when it dies, create a 1/1 citizen creature token for each 1/1 counter on it. Shabraz the Sky Shark costs 3 white blue and is a 3/3 with flying that says whenever you draw a card, put a 1/1 counter on Shabraz and you gain 1 life. You can also pay a white or a blue to give a target human flying until end of turn. Queza, Augur of Agonies is a 3/4 that costs 1 white blue black and says whenever you draw a card, target opponent loses a life and you gain a life. Psychosis Crawler costs 5 and it says its power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your hand. Whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. Corpse Knight is a 2/2 for a white and a black that says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. Healer of the Pride will let you gain 2 life when another creature enters the battlefield under your control. Impassioned Orator will let you gain 1 life when another creature enters the battlefield under your control. Suitor Priest will do the same, but it also lets you have an opponent lose a life when a creature enters the battlefield under their control. Rumor Gatherer says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, draw a card instead. So if Marneus is on the field, you can scry and draw when the first creature drops, then draw 2 on the second creature when it drops, then every creature after that you can scry and draw a card. So now that we have a handful of cards and a board full of creatures, let's make them bigger. Prava of the Steel Legion is a 1/4 that says as long as it's your turn, creature tokens you control get +1/+4. You can also pay 3 and a white to create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. Aaron, Benalia's Ruin is a 3/3 with Menace. It says pay white black, tap it, and sacrifice another creature to put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. The Junkyo Bell is an artifact for 4 that says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may have target creature you control get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. If you do this, sacrifice that creature at the end of turn. Marneus the Lunarch costs X white and enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it. You can tap him to put a 1/1 counter on Marneus, or tap him and remove a counter from him to put a 1/1 counter on each other creature you control. Inspiring Leader is an enchantment for 2 and a white that gives our tokens +2/+2 as long as our commander is out. Intangible Virtue is an enchantment for 1 and a white that will give our creatures +1/+1 in vigilance. Fane the Broker is a 3/3 for 2 and a black that has tap and sack a creature to put 2 1/1 counters on a target creature, tap and remove a counter from a creature you control to create a treasure token, tap and sack an artifact to create a 2/1 flying inkling token, and lastly, you can pay 3 and a black to untap Fane the Broker. Most exciting for me is Mace of the Valiant, an equipment for 2 and a white with an equip cost of 3. It says equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each charge counter on the mace, and it has vigilance. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a charge counter on Mace of the Valiant. Now, since our creatures will be dying left and right, especially to board wipes, we do have a few aristocrat pieces in here to punish our opponents when they take out our creatures. Zulaport Cutthroat will drain each opponent for 1 whenever another creature you control dies, and then you'll gain a life. Ellis Ilkor Sadistic Pilgrim will let us gain a life for each creature that enters the battlefield under our control. Also, whenever another creature we control dies, each opponent loses a life. Now, in white, blue, black, we have a lot of options for removal, so for these 5 slots, you can do whatever you like. But I used Bone Shards, Mortify, Fracture, Disenchant, and Hero's Downfall. And finally, for our ramp package, we just use the Signets, since we have quite a few things that make treasure tokens for us. And once we start drawing cards, we shouldn't have any problem making our land drops. Since our token generation is a little slow, and I don't expect us to have to discard the hand size too often, I didn't include any cards that give us an unlimited hand size. But if it turns out you're discarding too often, you should go ahead and swap cards for Decanter of Endless Water, Thought Vessel, and Reliquary Tower. And that's about it after you throw in 37 lands for your mana base. If everything works out, you'll have several token creatures that your opponents are going to have a tough time dealing with, and even worse, possibly a huge Marneus with a Mace of the Valiant smashing into your opponents with double strike. When we throw this into the TCG player shopping cart, our total comes to $40.03, which isn't too bad, I think. I did have a hard time with this deck though. Marneus has a general token strategy that with a bunch of swaps, you can change the win condition and even the way the deck is played. So you can kind of do anything you want with this. Leaning harder into aristocrats is one way, or going tribal tokens with any of the colors available, zombies, merfolk, or spirits and angels. It's really wide open, so let me know what you ended up doing with Marneus Calgar if you built it. I'm genuinely curious as to what others have decided to do with such a general token strategy. Be sure to like the video if you liked the video, dislike it if you disliked it, and until next time, I'm Space Coconut, and you're welcome.